hosted by Tony Gapperstone. Thanks for tuning in. It's showtime.
Well, hey, thanks for tuning in, everybody, to the 180th episode of the BraveMaker Show. My name is Tony Gapperstone. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm an actor and screenwriter director located in Redwood City, California. I'm in my studio today. I'm a Caucasian man with brown hair. I'm wearing a bluish shirt with the word Kirby on it, who's a character from Smash Brothers or maybe some other video games. I don't know. My daughter loves this game, and so I got this in honor of her. And I'm in my very colorful pink and blue green fake background BraveMaker studio with my film poster, Last Chance Charlene, which comes out February 28th on iTunes, Apple, and Amazon. So go check it out. You can pre-order it today. I'm so glad to be having my guest today. I'm solo from now on. Tear sheds down, slowly drips from my right eye. Christina Jackson, we said adieu to her last week. She is going to be still doing her thing, acting and singing and doing her art in the Bay Area. So go ahead and follow her if you'd like to stay connected. She will be a guest sometime again in the future, and I'm very excited for all the good things that are coming her way. I'll just shout her out. You can find her at #KRayCosplay. But today I have a guest that I connected with on social media. This is another great example of the power of social media, making connections and meeting people and celebrating cool people in the industry. Eriq HAYWOOD is with me today. Welcome, Eriq.
Hey, Tony. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for being here. I have been following you, I think, for a few years now, and you have all these really cool like writing credits, which we're going to jump into today. But let me just turn it over to you first to introduce yourself to our crew. Some people who are watching live or will watch visually on the replay, but we also have the audio podcast that comes out within a week. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell people where you're from, pronouns, and a physical description.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Eriq HAYWOOD. My pronouns are he, him. I am a screenwriter, producer, and director. I am a Black male, and I am wearing a gray t-shirt with the logo of the Williams Dreamland Theater, which was a movie theater in Tulsa, Oklahoma, about 100 years ago. And I am speaking to you from my home in Los Angeles, California.
Right on. Go Los Angeles. And so my connection with you, I think, came from seeing that you were a writer on Empire. Empire, I was like super dialed into that soapy show. I loved all of the characters and all the drama that was ensuing there. And I just kind of been watching you kind of like salivating over this cool life that you have. And so today I want to talk about your writing, your directing. I saw you have a short film on the circuit. So yeah, I want to start with all this stuff, but let's start first. Like, what's your backstory or your origin story? How'd you get into the industry?
My origin story. I was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I am part of that age demographic that saw Star Wars, the very first Star Wars, in theaters in 1977 and said, I don't know what this is, but I think I just had an out-of-body experience watching this thing. And many years later, discovered that one could make movies as an actual job. Prior to that, I thought movies just sort of like descended fully formed from the heavens. I didn't know that people actually made them and applied their craft to the process of making them. I went to high school in Milwaukee. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and got a bachelor's degree in film production. And my goal ever since then, and I detoured for a number of years. I started actually professionally as a music video director. And the reason for that was because I didn't have any rich relatives, or I didn't have any Hollywood connections that were going to just sort of magically usher me into the business. So I felt my first step should be getting my hands on as much production experience as possible. And at the time, making music videos was a viable career path. or was a first step into the industry. So I did that for a number of years. I was always daydreaming about the point at which I would be able to leave music videos behind and write and direct features, which was my ultimate career goal. And I was on my way to doing that because I had written several spec scripts in my spare time. And I got to a point where I said, well, I can either keep on making music videos for a living for the next 100 years, or I can go cold turkey from the music video business and pursue the thing that I really want to do, which is making movies. So I started pre-production and fundraising and all of that on what was going to be an ultra low budget guerrilla film shoot style first feature. Long story short, the script that I had written, which was sort of a character-driven family drama, began to circulate around Los Angeles. I should probably add that I was living in Atlanta at this time.
Okay.
And that script ended up getting me my first manager, my first agent, and then it got me my first job writing for television on a show called Soul Food, the series, which was a Showtime series that was a spinoff of the movie of the same name. And that sort of began my sort of like journey as a television writer. My original perception, or I should say misperception, was that, I'll just do this little TV thing until my big screen, ship comes in. Because at that time, the television landscape was nothing like what it is now. TV was sort of considered the brass ring, and television was kind of something that you just did if you couldn't get a job in the movie business. But I ended up getting my foot in the door of the TV business, of the TV writing business, right at the time when things began to shift, because that was around the time when The Sopranos came out and 6 Feet Under, and HBO sort of began to take a lot of the things that people loved about movies, or at least the kind of movies that I had my eye on making, and they turned them into weekly series, and it raised the bar. And then, cut to several years later, there are more premium cable networks, there are streaming services, and at the same time that there's been this sort of contraction on the feature film side. So anyway, Soul Food was my first foot in the door, and I've very happily remained primarily a television writer ever since.
Okay, so I grew up in Illinois, so we were kind of neighbors, which is so cool to hear somebody coming from the Midwest area there. So what was the jump when you talk about your scripts getting into the hands of these decision makers? We went from Madison to Atlanta. You were directing
Milwaukee.
Video. I'm sorry, Milwaukee.
Yes.
Milwaukee to Atlanta.
Yes.
And was the music video stuff happening in Atlanta, the directing and stuff?
Yeah, at that time, Atlanta was a real sort of like hotbed of production, both in commercials and music videos, and the TV and feature film business in Georgia was just sort of starting to really evolve. It was nothing like what it is now,
right?
But it was growing, and like I said, for me, music. The real value of music videos was I shot projects in a number of different cities under a number of different conditions, and you just sort of like paid your dues and took your lumps and made your mistakes and learned from them. But my goal was, when I am ultimately ready to set foot on the set of my first feature film, I will bring a certain level of practical hands-on experience, and that ended up, in this turning into this very fortunate detour, which took me into television instead. So
the script, when you had done the feature, did you had it already been produced when this other script had got you into the television?
No, it hadn't been produced. I was on the verge of producing it. One of the things that I learned I did music videos for several years, and I had a lot of friends and peers who, like me, were really interested in using their music video experience as a stepping stone or a jumping off point. Everybody wanted to make movies. But there were so many people who I would run into year after year after year, and they would talk about their big plans to make their Sundance winning, earth-shattering feature. And I would get very excited for them. And I would see them like a year later, and I was like, well, what's going on with that project you were telling me about? Oh, it fell apart. Or it didn't happen. Or I moved on to something else. And what I began to realize after hearing several variations of that kind of story was that there are a lot of people who talk about what their plans and their intentions are, but not a lot of people actually follow through. Not a lot of people actually make the movie.
Come on.
And I realized that if I can just actually make something, I can separate myself from all the talkers. And it didn't have to be the Sundance award-winning, critical darling. I just needed to have a finished calling card that I could show to people and say, I can take a project all the way from concept to completion.
Yep.
And not run out of gas, and not lose interest, and not run out of money, and not, whatever else. So my intention was to make a feature in Atlanta with all unknown actors, or primarily unknown actors, on a shoestring budget, just to show people that I could finish what I started. Along the way, I'm giving you the long version of the story now.
We love it.
I sent the script. I was like location scouting. I was casting. Like I was gonna do it. I'm also a Capricorn, so I'm extremely stubborn. So when I say I'm going to do something, unless something earth-shattering prevents me, then I really am going to finish what I start. And then something earth-shattering did happen. I sent the script to a producer friend of mine out here in LA, just purely for their feedback on the quality of the writing. They read the script, called me back like maybe a week later, said they loved the script and wanted me to help them get it, wanted to help me get it made through a studio. And they said, well, but here's the thing. You have to, they knew that I was making my sort of guerrilla filmmaking version of the movie in Atlanta, or I was gearing up to make it. And they said, well, here's the thing. You have to shut that down because we can't be shopping your script around Hollywood while you are actively in pre-production. And so I sort of weighed the pros and cons, and I said, well, my producer friend has connections. They have a deal with one of the major studios and an office on the lot, and they responded to my script. So I probably should roll the dice and roll with them and try to get this project made out in Hollywood. So I basically shut down my indie version of the project and gave my investors their money back, and I released the cast.
Oh, wow.
And I moved to LA.
Wow.
Thinking that because I had someone who was championing my script, that the movie was gonna get made like that, because I didn't know anything about the reality of the business. And I always remember, I literally, uprooted my entire life and I moved to Los Angeles. And, I went and I met with my producer friend. I'm like, I'm here. Let's take the script out. Let's get it made. And they said, okay, great. Glad you're here. Here's 10 pages of notes on the script. I'd love for you to, basically do another pass to really get it ready. It's close, but not quite there, before we begin to take it out. And I'm like, okay, not really knowing anything about how the business works. So I do another draft of the script, and the script goes to a major studio. And it was a Black family drama. And at that time, this is decades before Empire and Queen Sugar and, anything else that's currently popular. And the feedback from the studio was, we love the writing, love the writer, but we don't know who the audience for this project is. So we're going to pass. And then it went to another studio, exact same feedback. Great writer, love the writing, don't know who the audience is. In other words, they didn't think that a Black family drama would have appeal. So they passed, and this went on and on and on. And the project eventually sort of died out. But along the way, that script, as it circulated, got me my first manager, who then got me my first agent. And then the script ended up in the hands of a showrunner named Felicia Henderson, who was getting ready to go into production on Soul Food, the series.
Awesome.
Which was a Black family drama. And she read my script, and she gave me a freelance, what was then sort of common practice, which is sort of fallen by the wayside. She gave me what was called a freelance episode of the first season, which means she hired me to write one episode of the first season. I was not on staff. I didn't have any of the benefits of being, actually on staff or in the writer's room, but I would have a credit, and it would get produced, and I would get paid. And all of those things happened, and I guess the experience went well. And then Felicia offered me a job on staff the second season. And that became my formal introduction into the TV writing business. And what I realized was one of the major benefits of being a television writer as opposed to a feature writer. Features don't really have, unless you're making a big tentpole summer blockbuster that the studio has to release on 4th of July weekend or at Christmas or whatever. Usually you don't have a timetable for the making of your movie. So things can drag on for months and months and years. When you're working in television, there's already a schedule. You know how many episodes, you have the air dates locked in. So the things you are writing are going to get shot, and they're going to get edited, and they're going to air. So there was a huge sort of, like, for me, there was a huge sense of motivation, because I felt like because I spent a couple of years sort of like polishing and rewriting my feature film script. But when I made the transition over into television, I was like, oh, all these ideas that we're bouncing around and these scripts that we're writing, they're going to get made. They're going to get put on television for people to see. And it wasn't instant gratification, but it was by comparison to the feature world, it was pretty close to instant gratification. So that really fed my sense of accomplishment and achievement, knowing that the scripts and the episodes that I was writing were going to get made and going to get seen, and then you would go back and do it all over again the following season. So, very long-winded answer, but that was my point of entry into the TV business.
And you've been in it for how long now?
Oh boy, I moved to Los Angeles in September of 1999.
Wow.
And I got the freelance episode of Soul Food, I want to say in the spring of 2000.
Wow.
So it happened really quickly. And then, through Felicia's kindness, when she brought me, it could have been a one and done.
Yeah.
But when she brought me on staff season 2, it's sort of like it changed my life and career.
That's amazing. We talk a lot about our show about the relationships and the industry. So, that is so dependent in a good way on knowing people and people knowing you and people helping and opening doors and linking arms with you and believing in your work, as it is so hard to break in, and every person's story is so different. But you've been in it, I mean, for 5 years, before like peak TV.
Yes.
I mean, like, wow, like you've got an amazing history. Would you say from Soul Food on that you've been a full-time writer? Like that's been your job?
I wish I could say that. I think most writers who I know who have done this for any length of time, the thing you crave, I think, the thing most people crave the most is not the money, and it's not being famous, and it's not being recognizable. At the very least, what you crave is a bare minimum amount of career stability.
Sustainability too, I'm sure.
Like
right?
if you can just work enough to pay your bills and keep your health insurance, like that's all you really care about for most people, I think, when you first break in. But my point is, also, like most people that I know, I've had in my early years, I had peaks and valleys. I had years where I didn't work. I had years where I worked steadily and I thought, this is it, I'm good. And then I learned, well, you know, you're only one bad staffing season away from being unemployed for a year or two. Mm-hmm. So that was a lesson that I learned the hard way. But once Empire came along, it really did sort of like change the game for me. And I still take nothing for granted. But I knew the first season when the show became as successful as it became, I said, let me hang on to this for as long as I possibly can. Because you never know when it's going to come back around again. You never know if this is going to be, you know, the peak of your career or not. So yeah, the short answer is no, I have not worked nonstop as a professional paid writer, but I've always, even in my lean years, I've always written. I've always like either I wrote spec scripts or I wrote features or I wrote pilots. I was always doing something so that when the pendulum swung back the other way and I started getting, you know, regular employment, like I wasn't just sitting around doing nothing during the lean years where I had to like dust off my skill set and get back in the swing of things. I was like, I'm ready. Mm-hmm. I have been in the bullpen warming up for the last 8-9 months. So when I come in to Empire first season as a mid-level executive story editor, I felt like I was punching a little bit above my weight class because I had been I'd been pushing myself to, you know, continue working on my own because I felt like one of these days things are going to turn around and I need to be ready when they do. And I feel like that's sort of, you know, exactly what happened.
So cool. I so admire your tenacity and hard work. And I think one of the things I have to continually tell myself when I want to give up is it's a marathon and you just got to keep going. You got to be ready. You got to do the work. You got to show up. You got to write. You got to be prepared. Because yes, sure, people can talk about luck, but it's the hard work that meets that opportunity, right? That potentially is being offered to you so that you're ready for it. I remember one point following you and you had I think you had posted a picture of a script with your name on it. It was like Empire written by Eriq LaSalle, and you had I think you covered something that you had to keep confidential, but I was like, how cool was that to be able to see, you know, your journey? And I wonder if you could share, was that connection from your agent staffing you? Was it relationships? How did that job land for you to help you get to that new level?
Empire, here's the thing. This is one of the reasons why I find it a little difficult to give people career advice because everybody's journey is so specific. Yeah. And it's not really reproducible by another person. Now, maybe you can take a sort of broader lesson from somebody else's journey, which I think is, you know, certainly has value. But the steps that I was able to take, like literally couldn't be repeated. And I'll tell you why. A big part of the reason why I think I got the Empire job, in addition to having strong writing samples and I met for Empire 3 times. I met with executives at Fox. I met with executives at Imagine, and then I met with Eileen Chaikin, the showrunner. So you got to have the strong samples. You also got to be good in all of those meetings. one person saying, I don't know, not really, not really wild about it. Could mean the difference between you getting the job and not, because all of a sudden the person who was on your side begins to have second thoughts because the other person is not 100% on you. Not, it's beyond your control. All you can do is go into those meetings and swing for the fences. But a big part of what helped me get the Empire job is the fact that I had been a music video director. I had directed, rap and R&B videos. And I said, and I don't remember, it might have been the Fox meeting. And I remember saying, and no disrespect to Lee Daniels and Danny Strong at all. I remember saying, and I think it was the Fox meeting, I said, you come in and you sit down and they ask you, what did you think? And I told them honestly that I love the script. I love the characters. I love the family conflict. It was juicy. I wanted to know what happened next. But, and you have to be very careful when you offer anything that feels like criticism, because it could go either way. It could backfire. Even if your criticism is dead on, even that could backfire. So what I said was, after I led with all of the praise, which was sincere, I said, but as someone who spent like 10 years making, music videos, the script kind of reads to me like it was written by someone who hasn't spent a lot of time hanging out inside an actual R&B record label.
Oh, good.
And I think that sort of became like my silver bullet.
Yeah.
Because I was able to then begin to just like randomly tell stories of people that I had worked with and things that I had seen and people that I had worked for at various labels across the country that were not unlike the label that was depicted on the show. So now how am I going to tell someone who is, 19, here's what you do. First, go get a job as a music video director and do that for 10 years, and then hope that someone makes a TV show that is set in a in a record label, and then hope they hire you, and then hope that it becomes a big hit. This is what I mean about the steps not really being reproducible. But I think there is probably a broader lesson. Like, writers often talk about describing things from the 30,000 foot view. Like, what is your equivalent of my journey that you can use when you set foot in those meetings to let them know that you're the perfect person for the job? Maybe it's a military show and you have military experience. Maybe it's a sports show and you're an athlete. Or, maybe whatever it is. Maybe it's a legal show and you used to be a lawyer and you're transitioning. Like, whatever that thing is, like, lean into that and be humble about it. And be appreciative that they're taking the time to even, meet with you and consider you, but let them know that you have a point of view and you have something unique and specific to offer. And even if if it's a military show and you don't have military experience and they let you read the pilot, assuming this is a new show, find something in that script that you can latch onto. Like, maybe the main character is divorced and you say in your meeting, maybe you just share that, I relate to that situation. My marriage ended and we did this, and I co-parent, and I think there's that avenue that I can bring to the show. I'm completely spitballing, but I think the point, I hope, is coming across. Like, find the thing, find your way in, and find the thing that you relate to and connect to better than anybody else. And then you don't have to worry about the fact that, well, it's a sports show and I'm not an athlete. Well, maybe there's some other element in the show. They'll find their athlete to be on the writing staff. Yeah. Maybe a couple. But maybe there's something else about the characters or the conflicts or this, the basic setup of the show that you can say, that's the thing that I connect with. And basically, not in so many words, but you want to say, this is why you need me. Yep. And you again, humbly, but with confidence, you got to find that needle thread between you don't want to be arrogant and cocky, but you also don't want to downplay what you would bring to the table. and you let them know, like, this is why I think I would be a fantastic asset for this particular show. And then, like, hopefully, all the stars line up, and you get that job.
Eriq, yeah, that is such good wisdom. And I think, so many things going through my brain that there's no one way to go in, and everyone's journey is so different. And especially things are changing so quickly now. I mean, I'm hearing people are being picked up off of TikTok, and, like those things weren't there when,
Right.
I was trying to get in. And I remember I did a general with ABC one time. This was before Abbott Elementary. And so now I know, when they were asking me certain questions, they were saying, like, have you ever been a teacher? Do you have an experience in the classroom? And I was like, I don't, but I'm married to a teacher. And they immediately like, oh, tell us what that's like.
There you go.
And
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And they were just asking me all these questions about what it's like to be married to my wife, Wendy, who's a teacher in second grade. And so, yeah, you just never know what they're looking for. And it also just reminds me too, Suhasini Krishnan, who was a screenwriter we had on a few weeks ago, she was talking about knowing your voice and what your brand is and what kind of stories you like to tell. Doesn't mean you're always going to be pigeonholed into that area, but it's really good to have a narrative that works for you. And the fact that you did music videos, I mean, like, wow, like chef's kiss, perfect timing. How cool is that?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many variables that are beyond all of our control. If Lee and Danny hadn't written Empire, then I would have hopefully ended up on some other show, but it wouldn't have been that one. So yeah, there are so many things. All you can really do is put your best foot forward. And if one opportunity doesn't work out, maybe another one will. And I say that because there was another show, which I will not name, prior to Empire, that and speaking of having peaks and valleys in your career, this was a show that I had met for. I met for it twice, actually, and I desperately not only wanted this job, but I needed this job and didn't get it, and was devastated. And it wasn't until like a year or so later that I looked back and realized, if I had gotten that job, I would not have been available for Empire, the job that changed my life. So it's hard to wrap your mind around it in the moment when it's happening, but not every no is fatal.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you have enough distance and perspective, and it just sounds so corny, but it's so true. Like, I've had this happen more than once. Sometimes you look back and you're like, oh, that no was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Because if they had said yes, then I wouldn't have had this other thing, and who knows where I would be. So you have to be able to, pick yourself up when you get knocked down and figure out how to keep moving forward.
So many knockdowns. So by the way, those of you who are watching live, if you want to throw a question in there, please feel free to do it. And if you're watching on the replay or listening to the audio, you can go and follow Eriq HAYWOOD and just comment on his stuff and follow him on Insta or Twitter. Great follow, and learn a lot and be inspired by the work. So this time in 2023, when I think I just heard there's 599 scripted shows happening. It seems like there's a little bit of an implosion. We keep hearing about layoffs and shows that are being canceled, even ones that have been renewed. There's talk about a writer's strike. I know you're actually on a committee for the Writers Guild of America.
Yes.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about kind of the state of being a screenwriter. And I want to talk to you about your short film and your directing and other stuff too. So many things to talk about, but just your kind of thoughts around what it looks like to be a screenwriter today who's working in television.
I mean, it definitely feels like, I was going to say, it feels like it's a little bit of a scary time. Yeah. But as I say that, I also say to myself, when has it not been a scary time? Shows have always been canceled.
Yeah.
There are shows that I've worked on. One of the shows that I worked on, my second show in the business, was a short-lived NBC show called Hawaii. It was a police procedural that was set on the big island of Hawaii. And the show premiered. It didn't do that well out of the gate, and we sort of struggled in the following weeks in the ratings. I was on the set of that show when the line producer pulled up. We were doing a take, and the line producer showed up and said, "Shut it down."
Ouch.
We just got word that we're canceled. Like, not one more, inch of footage is to be shot. Like, literally put your shit down and go home. So to hear that shows are being canceled and shows and movies are getting the plug pulled on them, I think our access to information sometimes makes it seem like it's a tidal wave. But, I was there. I was on Soul Food I was on staff from season 2 until the end of season 5. I was on set for the series finale. Now, we knew that finale was coming, so we had written towards it. But somewhere I have pictures of the cast and crew from the last day of shooting. So I've been through this thing of like what it feels like when a show ends. And so I'm not saying that it's not an uncomfortable or even scary situation to be facing, but we all are sort of at the whim of our corporate overlords. When the network says we're not making this show anymore, there's not the decision's been made, and 9 times out of 10 that becomes the end of it. So we face a lot of the same things that we've always faced. I think the fact that there are so many shows and so many outlets is probably more reason to be optimistic than pessimistic. When Hawaii got canceled, there was no Netflix, there was no Amazon, there was no Hulu, there was no Paramount Plus, there was no Peacock. It wasn't like, well, if I'm going to lose this job, let me go over to Peacock and see what they're talking about. It didn't exist. So I feel like there are more options now than there ever were, even though there are, it feels like we are being inundated with, things being canceled. It's the nature of the business, unfortunately.
And if you hear that and you're trembling in your boots, it's either, you go forward or you go back, like you either run toward the fire and try to put it out and try to do something about it, or maybe this isn't for you. I think that's some really good reminders, is that, it's a business, it's a show / business, and there's always going to be a need for the art and the stories, and there's going to be need for the marketing and the commercial side, and somehow we got to figure out how to navigate it forward. One thing I see you doing, which I think is cool and I love when I see, because I'm a short filmmaker. That's how I got my start, and my first feature is coming out soon. You had a short that was just doing the festival circuit. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, because you don't sometimes hear people in film and like the feature film or the TV space still doing shorts, and I love that you did that. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, a few years ago, I wrote and directed and co-produced a short film called The Last Starship. And I did it because, as I said in the beginning, I came into this business with the intention of being a writer-director. And I just, fortunate. I was fortunate enough to work relatively steadily as a TV writer, and fairly steadily for the past several years. But I never lost sight of my interest in directing. I also directed an episode of Empire in season 4 of the show. And what I wanted to be able to do was, and I still intend to do more episodic TV directing. So after I finished the Empire episode, I said, okay, well, this is what I can show people that I can do with a network budget and with somebody else's characters and somebody else's show. But I also want to be able to show people what I can do when it's just me and it's just my idea, and I set the tone and I cast, and I also edited it. So like I had control over a lot of things. I wanted to be able to say, okay, well, here's my Empire episode. it has to fit it has to feel like the show that has already been well established. You can't just go do something completely crazy and wildly, out of the existing format of the show. So it's hard to put your personal stamp on. You can do it in some ways, but not the same as when you create something from a whole cloth, out of your imagination. One prior to Manifest, one area that I had never worked in was the realm of science fiction. So I wanted to tell, and as a lifelong fan of science fiction, I wanted to do a science fiction story, but one that still felt character driven. And so I sat down and I said, well, here are my resources. Here's what I think I can do. I also wanted to be able to show, and this is not a knock on anyone's resources. I do think that if all you have at your disposal is a smartphone, then use that. But I felt like for myself, as long as I've sort of like been in the business, I needed a short film that had a certain look.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to do a, shoestring budget, one day shoot, shot on cell phone kind of thing. I wanted to look, I didn't want you to have to imagine what I would be able to do if I had, name recognizable actors and high-end cameras and VFX and all of that. So I wrote it, A, to scratch my directorial itch, and B, as a practical calling card to be able to show to people and say, here's what I'm not just someone who fell out of bed one day and said, I think it'll be fun to direct. Let me, I've been on enough sets. I've been in enough video villages looking over the shoulders of various directors and seeing how they do things.
Yeah. And
I'm always learning. It's either I'm gonna do that thing that this director is doing, or when it's my turn, I see why they're doing what they're doing. I'm gonna do it a little bit differently. And the short was an opportunity to just be in control of all those choices. So we finished the short, and it made the festival circuit for about a year. Was screened, internationally as well as in various festivals here in the States. But like I said, it was a way for me to scratch that directorial itch. It was a hard shoot, but I had a ball, and may do it again at some point.
Awesome. Congrats. Now, is the last Starship out in the world on YouTube or anywhere?
It is not, and it probably will be at some point. I haven't decided on exactly when. I have kept the full short off of YouTube or Vimeo or what have you, just because it had more value while it was still making the festival rounds. If people couldn't just open up YouTube and watch it.
Yeah.
But now I feel like it's had a very healthy festival life. So at some point in the very near future, I'll probably post the whole thing for those who didn't have an opportunity to see it at a festival.
Sweet. Well, I'm gonna talk to you about that after, because I have a thought around that. So
okay,
we'll see if we can make some connections. But that's really, really cool. I want to ask one more question, because I know I see you posting a lot of a beautiful woman who's also a creative partner. It looks like is your wife, is your partner also in the industry, and how does that work out in your life?
She's in the industry. She is a producer, but she largely works in the unscripted side of things. So our sort of like business and creative interests don't really overlap or collide. She is still sort of the first person who will read things that I write and give me feedback. And sometimes when I get sort of stuck and I just need to talk out loud to hear myself think, she'll come and sit, and I'm like, I need to vent for like 5 minutes. She's like, okay, shoot. And then and sometimes she'll have a very helpful piece of advice, and sometimes just the act of talking through it out loud helps you in a way that just thinking kind of doesn't. So we usually end up with some sort of combination of either she'll say, "What about this?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's just what I needed," or I will stumble backwards into the solution that I was looking for just by having a sounding board to bounce all of my thoughts off of. So, but first and foremost, if either or both of us ever, left our respective industries, I still could not ask for a better person to walk through this journey with. So that's first.
Great.
All the other stuff is icing.
Maybe we need to get her on the show too to talk about her work. That sounds super fun. All right.
I'll pass on the invitation.
Yes. We have one question that just popped in before we end. And I realized, oh my gosh, I forgot to bring this up. I think one of the reasons I connected with you is you had Loretta Devine in that short you did. She was in 2 of my projects.
Oh, wow.
I love Loretta. She was in my very first short film that I ever did.
That's great. She is a godsend.
Is it?
I did not know Loretta before making the short. I had no connection to her. I had a casting director who said, and I had the role that she was right for. And my casting director came to me and she's like, "I think we might be able to get Loretta Devine." And I was like, "For the money that I'm offering, we can get Loretta Devine?"
Yeah.
But what I had to do was she's like, "But you're going to have to write her a letter."
Yeah.
And so I wrote her, basically explaining why I wanted her specifically and why I thought she would be, ideal for the part. And, I can write a script, like nobody's business, but when it comes to writing an actual letter, like a personal / professional,
it's different.
To a stranger who you've admired in countless movies and TV shows your entire life, like that was more nerve-wracking than anything. But she read it, she said yes, she came on board. She was, there was no like entourage, there was no attitude. She rolled up her sleeves and did whatever was needed. She was an absolute joy to work with. So hopefully we'll get to do it again.
I'm going to send her this because she's one of my favorite people. And the same thing, when I did my first short, a friend of mine worked at her agency, didn't rep her, but knew the agent who repped her and said, "I can get this connection." Write her a note, same thing. Did my short, came to New York with me when we premiered the Urban World Film Festival. And this is a great example to me of like an actor who actors like to act. And it never hurts. It never hurts to reach out to your favorite actors and ask with whatever money you have. They could always say no, but get used to it. Rejection happens. But sometimes they say yes, and it's like the best thing ever. So that's amazing.
I didn't know the film also stars Grace Byers, who I did know from Empire, and wrote her the lead character with her in mind. And then I only knew Jack Coleman through social media. Aside from the fact that I've seen him on a million different TV shows pretty much my entire life. And like you said, actors like to act. Yeah. And so I sent him a DM and I'm like, "Do you mind if I ask you a question?" And one thing led to another. He read the script. We met. He ended up doing 2 days on the film. Could not have been more of a dream to work with. So yeah, I think if you approach people the right way, if you are direct, if you have something that they're interested in, then you never know. It may work out.
Gosh, so good, Eriq. Okay, last point here. Last question comes from Sky. Sky is one of the BraveMaker interns. You said earlier you went into production for a script you felt wasn't perfect, but you just wanted to get it done to have in your back pocket. Is it better to make a good, quote unquote, movie or just get it done?
Well, that's let me clarify. We were not in production. We were in the very early stages of pre-production. I was casting and I was location scouting, but I didn't have a crew and we weren't actually filming. But the broader answer to your question, it's a very personal decision because making something, especially something self-financed, is so difficult. And you have to weigh for yourself what's worth it to you. For me, like I said earlier, having something that was complete, I knew it wasn't going to be terrible. It wasn't going to be unwatchable. But so with that in mind, the next target to hit for myself was it's got to be complete. So if you are making something that is like VFX driven and you don't have the money to finish if you're making The Matrix and you don't have Matrix money and you complete it, but some of the scenes aren't where they're supposed to be. You don't want to have to explain to the viewer, well, we ran out of money on this scene, and you want to be able to set your sights on something that is complete and as complete as you can possibly make it. So instead of making The Matrix, maybe you make something that is small and character driven that you can finish with a certain level of quality. So by no means do I think you should just complete something if you don't think it is your best foot forward. That defeats the purpose, and it burns through a lot of time and energy and money. But if you can maybe, set your sights on a more attainable goal, I think it goes without saying that completed, but also, as good as you can make it is the winning combination. It's
great. Eriq, so good. Thank you so much for all this story sharing, good nuggets of wisdom. I don't want to end this because I have so many more things to say, but maybe we'll have to have you back again in the future. But okay. I'm looking forward to hearing your favorite things, so don't go away.
Brave Faves. TV shows, films, books, songs, technology, clothing, podcast, food, and more. These are a few of our favorite people, places, and things. Brave Faves.
All right, I'm going to go first. Y'all, I can't believe I did not know that Trader Joe's makes a coffee ice cream. I love coffee ice cream, and I just randomly saw it in the freezer section. I picked it up on Friday, and I demolished it over the weekend. It was gone. It's totally cheap as well and better than Dryers or any other coffee ice cream, honestly, I ever have. I told my wife, because she was gone this weekend, I was with my 3 daughters, and I got all the ice cream for everybody. And when she got home, I said, honey, have you ever heard of this? She's like, oh yeah, it's well known. It's a well-known fact that this is some of the best coffee ice cream ever. Then I said, why have we never gotten it before? So that's my Brave Fave. Eriq, what's your Brave Fave for the week?
My Brave Fave is not as pleasant as coffee ice cream. My Brave Fave is actually a video game. And I will show it to you. Some of you, if you're of a certain age, you may remember a video game called Doom. Now, the reason why this is my current fave, Doom is a first-person shooter video game that came out in the mid-1990s, and it spawned a whole franchise. It was wildly successful, and I think I was in Best Buy, and I just randomly saw. I used to play it religiously back in the day, but hadn't thought about it, hadn't seen it, hadn't touched it in decades. So I'm in Best Buy and I see they had released it for the PS4, and I snatched it. It was like one copy left on the shelf. But what they did was they have preserved the 1990s level graphics quality. So it's a little bit pixelated. Basically, it sort of like really scratches my nostalgia itch.
Nice.
Because I've been playing it nonstop. Like my wife came home the other night. She's like, really again? With the guns and the shooting the monsters. But it just sort of like it takes me back to my pre-TV, pre-Hollywood days, and it's fun. I think if you've grown up on sophisticated games like Call of Duty and The Last of Us, it probably looks a little old and cheesy, but if you were there, if you were outside when Doom was sweeping, taking the world by storm, it's fun. It's as fun now as it was 25 years ago.
Eriq, do you need to try to get the rights to this? Is this a TV series in your future potential?
I don't think so. They made a movie. The Rock actually starred in a movie based on the game. Maybe 15 or so years ago.
I missed that.
It's been done, which is not to say that it couldn't be done again. And I'm sure, as popular as this thing is, and everybody is so IP driven these days, I'm sure the rights are tied up somewhere.
Exactly.
But as a game, I it lets me forget about all
That's great.
the stresses of everyday life. So
and with that, I think it's a good reminder. Everyone have some outlet as creative people, as people who are always making and building worlds and developing characters. It's nice to have like a little something that you just can go and numb out and play. That Smash Brothers for me has been my thing. So
there you go.
Eriq, this is so good. Thank you so much. Don't go away. Let me do my outro here. Everybody watching our 180th episode with Eriq HAYWOOD. Thank you for supporting us and watching and listening and sharing. We need you to go to our YouTube page, like, subscribe, and share. Share this episode with friends, with screenwriters, with emerging storytellers who want to do the things that Eriq is doing. Follow Eriq at Eriq HAYWOOD on Instagram. And you can also go to his website at eriqhaywood.com. And those of you who are new to the show, and a reminder to those of you who are familiar, tried and trues, we are a nonprofit. So BraveMaker cannot do the things that we do without your support and your financial donations and provision. So we encourage you, if you can give $5, $25, $50 donations, even one time or every month, do it on your phone. Just text the word BraveMaker. That's one word, BraveMaker, to 44321. You help me do the show. You help me pay for all the subscriptions for our live stream software, our gear, our space, even helping to make our films. And Last Chance Charlene is coming out on February 28th. It's my first feature film, BraveMaker's first produced feature film. Please go to Apple TV or iTunes and pre-order it. That will help us continue to make more films. And we couldn't be more grateful for all of you supporting us and doing this great work. And we want you to come back next week where we'll have another amazing guest to talk about the craft and the art of filmmaking and storytelling and being a brave maker. Can't do this without the help of our amazing producer, Amy Cohen in Austin, Texas, as well as our podcast editor, Barnell Amos in Grand Rapids, Michigan, our social media manager, Carrie Ailey, also from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and our social media and intern, Jessica Cohen, who will take these clips and put them out there after so you can all find them and share them with other people in your life. Thank you so much for watching. Eriq, thank you so much for being a part of this. I will continue to follow. Super excited. And I know you got a new project. So when that gets released, I'm going to be watching the deadline and the trades and all that kind of stuff, seeing what's next and rooting you on. But yeah, thanks so much for being a part of this. And I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, don't go away because I like to take a picture with my guests at the very end of the show. We'll play our outro and we'll be right back. Brave stories change the world, everybody, and you are the story. See you later. Don't go away, Eriq.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at BraveMaker.org. Like, subscribe, and share. To become a monthly donor, text the word BraveMaker to 44321 or go to bravemaker.com/donate. Thanks for tuning in.